The Lodha panel has in fact now asked for all BCCI office bearers to be removed. This is the breaking news coming in with the Chief Justice slamming the Indian Cricket Board, asking them are they a law unto themselves. Let's go straight across to the head of the Lodha committee, Mr. Lodha himself. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Justice Lodha. This has been in the making for a while. So what I wanted to ask you was, how is it that realistically the BCCI will actually now respond on the 6th of October to say that we will implement it now and in fact new administrators will not be put and current office bearers of the BCCI not be removed then?
No, that is for the BCCI to finalize their plan and submit to the court. I am nobody to comment on their line of action. That is for the BCCI. We have submitted the report as we found that there were impediments in implementation of the recommendations as approved by the Supreme Court. And one of the options given by the Supreme Court to the committee was that should there be any impediment in implementation of the recommendations, the same may be brought to the notice of the court by submitting the status report. We have chosen that route and submitted the status reports highlighting the impediments and the violations of the directives of the committee.
With the BCCI going ahead and holding their AGM and making appointments like that of the secretary that goes into 2016, 2017, you knew that the moment that AGM would be held, there would be this decision taking and in a sense they would be defying what you had suggested, recommended and the Supreme Court had therefore ordered. How do you see the BCCI's mood in all of this? Are they completely in denial of your existence in a sense?
I am nobody to examine their mood. We have only examined the decisions taken by BCCI in its AGM. We had already clarified to them that AGM can go ahead and they can discuss routine matters and the things for the year 2015-16. And no decision should be taken concerning 2016-17. If certain decisions have been taken which are direct in conflict with what we directed BCCI to do, which in committee's view are violations of its directives, and therefore it became necessary for us to bring it to the notice of the Supreme Court that these are the violations and appropriate order be passed in this regard so that reforms can be carried out, recommendations can be implemented and the Supreme Court judgment can be complied with.
So specifically, have you asked for the office bearers Anurag Thakur and Ajay Shirke to be removed?
No names. We are not concerned with names. We are only concerned with that the present existing office bearers be superseded and panel of arbitrators be put in their place.
So you're saying that all office bearers of the BCCI need to be superseded?
Yeah, office bearers, we don't identify A, B or C.
Right.
The person who are in charge of the affairs of the BCCI.
Would you then have recommendations in line for administrators to take over, or would that be a process that would be undertaken only after?
That will be taken by that decision will be taken by the Supreme Court, whether there is indeed a necessity for that, and then whether who should man the panel of arbitrators. That's for the court to decide. We have brought the facts to the notice of the court. We have prayed for two things: that we find that there are violations of our directives, and it appears difficult that all the timelines which have been drawn by the committee would be carried out in time. And obviously, therefore, there must be some body in place who would carry out these directives, and we have recommended to the we have brought all these facts to the notice of the Supreme Court.
So specifically, Justice Markandeya Karju is somebody that is associated with the BCCI at this point in time. In that context, would you be willing to concede that the BCCI has geared up to tackle the recommendations made by you?
Oh, they must do, and they have already done. Look, for how many days arguments continued before the Supreme Court after we submitted the report. Every recommendation which was not acceptable to the BCCI was opposed. They had full opportunity to argue, and after hearing them, the Supreme Court has accepted. Look, nobody undermines their capacity, capability, and power, in which they did with all force in the Supreme Court. We are not concerned with that. We are not, fighting as an adversarial litigation. We are not a party. We have been given task, a mandate by the Supreme Court to do a certain thing, and we are only discharging that. Look, for us, it's not an adversarial form of litigation. We are not party to the litigation. We firstly when Supreme Court asked us to give report on reforms in the administration of BCCI, we complied with that direction of the Supreme Court after hearing so many people consisting of large number of former captains, right from Sachin Tendulkar, Saurav Ganguly, Rahul Dravid, Anil Kumble, Kapil Dev, Bishan Singh Bedi and other players like Jagpal Srinath, Venkatesh Prasad, so many cricket administrators like Mr. Jagmohan Dalmia, Mr. Shashank Manohar, Mr. Anurag Thakur, Mr. Ajay Shirke, Mr. Aniruddha Chaudhary.
Right.
They had their views, and not that all were unanimous. And we took our views into consideration and submitted our report what we thought was best in the interest of the game, best in the interest of administration. And they were only recommendations so long as it continued to be a report. After the report was submitted, most of these recommendations were opposed by BCCI before the Supreme Court. They were given full hearing. Hearing continued for months together. And it was thereafter the Supreme Court finally passed the judgment. Our report has now merged into the Supreme Court judgment, and we are enforcing or implementing the Supreme Court judgment to the extent our report has been accepted. It's as simple as this.
Right. So because you mentioned Kapil Dev, I just wanted to ask you about both.
We had an interaction. Look, it may not be on all these points. Kapil Dev has his views now, which everyone knows. We are not saying that everyone accepted what we were doing, or we just had a broad view from all these players, which are players of, I think, repute, and all of them have spent. So I am not commenting on the views of Mr. Kapil Dev or other former captains. They have their views. What I'm saying is, these views were placed before the Supreme Court while opposing our recommendations by the BCCI. But the court has finally, after hearing them, taken a view and given its judgment. And the Supreme Court judgment is binding on all. Everyone has to respect it. And that is what has to be done. And we are simply complying with the mandate given by the Supreme Court to this committee. One, to draw up timeline for implementation of the recommendations which have been accepted by the Supreme Court, and two, to supervise the implementation. So our brief is limited to that, and we are doing what we have been asked to do.
Right, sir. Just one other question, sir. You talked about Kapil Dev, and of course you were responding to both Sunny Gavaskar and Kapil Dev, saying some of the Lodha recommendations are too much. But what Ravi Shastri said, he advocated a dialogue to actually fix some of the contentious issues between the BCCI and you. Would you be open to a dialogue with the BCCI on those contentious issues?
I don't know. Look, you have to appreciate we are not party to the litigation. There is no question of dialogue. We have simply to implement the Supreme Court judgment now. Why everyone is open? We called for the first meeting.
So
for the meeting that we held on 9th August, 3 weeks before that meeting, intimation was sent to Mr. Anurag Thakur and Mr. Ajay Shirke to appear before the committee. Mr. Shirke did appear on 9th. Mr. Anurag Thakur, for the difficulties, an application was made, he did not appear. Dialogue means we have called them, we wanted to discuss, we did discuss, and a simple task has been given to us by the Supreme Court to implement. But Supreme Court judgment can't be changed by us. It has to be done by the Supreme Court only, not by anybody else.
If the BCCI asks for a dialogue with you, would you be open to it?
Welcome. Who stops them? We invited on our own. We sent communication to them to come before us on 9th August. As I told you, one of them did come, the other did not.
So you are obviously responding in the position of the chief of this panel. But if I had to ask you as a citizen who obviously, like every other Indian, follows cricket, some of the recommendations or rather observations made by the Supreme Court today against the Indian Cricket Board, the BCCI, basically asking, we don't expect them this kind of conduct from the BCCI. Would you second that kind of an observation?
I would not speak on that. What our report is self-explanatory. We have highlighted, we have indicated what are the violations of the Supreme Court judgment and committee's recommendations. So that speaks for itself. I don't have to speak more than that.
Thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. Justice RM Lodha, the chief of the Lodha panel. It means a lot. Thank you so much for giving us your perspective and your view. But basically, the big headline coming out of this particular interview at this point in time, the telephonic one, that the BCCI has been, in a sense, the Lodha committee wants all BCCI office bearers to be superseded. That's something we will continue to track. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Lodha.